It didn't like me yesterday.
Is Facebook gonna like you today?
We're gonna find out. If you're watching me look at my phone, I'm sorry. I'm trying to make sure
It
that
looks like you're on.
it says I am. Disconnected me. All right, you know what?
I don't know. You're still moving on.
No, it disconnected my eye.
It says
You know what?
You're live now.
I'm done. But I can still hear me with that volume. Okay. It's Friday.
Oh, fun.
It is the Mondayest Friday ever. All right, I'm going to give it a couple minutes and then explain to people why things are a little bit different today. So hopefully they can hear me. We'll wait.
Is this muted? I hope it's muted because otherwise I can't.
I don't hear anything. And I did just hear me.
It wasn't muted.
You heard me on my phone.
That was on your phone?
Yep.
Okay. Hang on.
This is muted now, but when it was not muted, I didn't hear anything.
I also might have the volume off. I do that sometimes.
On this?
Okay. Okay. I can still hear me. We're good. All right. I'm not that far from the iPad, so it shouldn't be a super big issue.
So that's what's picking up the iPad?
Yeah.
Oh boy. Oh, you'll hear me more than her.
Probably, yes.
So keep your mouth shut.
All right,
Barb.
so...
Mind your own business.
Or you
Mar.
could both be nice to each other since we're live. Just a thought. All right.
This is
Good.
our life.
Yes, but we have to be nice on Fridays. Okay.
This is weird. It's not showing anybody.
Here.
Okay, I can't
No,
help you
just
right
keep
now.
going.
I'm going to. All right. So, if you were around yesterday for the log cabin video, you know that we were having some technical difficulties. And this morning, I still have no idea what that problem is. So I am on a different iPad. I have tried 2 different laptops. I have tried that iPad and it was not working, and it's still making the horrible noises that it was making for whatever reason. So we are, we do not have mics. So we have no microphones on. Barb is actually closer to the iPad than I am, so I'm sure you can hear her. Barb, say hi.
Hi, everybody.
Okay, I'm sure you can hear her. If she asks me a question and you don't hear it, I will repeat it anyway. So if you hear the question twice, your hearing's great. So anyway, we're just having one of those days. It's Friday, but it's okay because it's Friday. Friday's a good day. So we've got a few things to go over. We've got some things to ask you. And then today we're going to talk about handles. Some, not so much handle hardware, but some tips on putting your handles together and some different ways that you can do them. I have some demo pieces here, so we'll talk about cotton and we'll talk about cork and all that good stuff. So let's jump into the fun stuff right now. I have one thing to show you, and then we'll go right over there. So
Can
in
I
case
say
you,
one thing quick?
yeah,
If people don't see any responses to the comments yet, it's because we're having trouble getting to see them.
I'm liking them on my phone.
okay, all right,
They know that we're
So.
here.
all right. Well, they'll come up from you,
Yeah.
but that's okay.
Yeah, that's all right. I
If
mean,
Marlene likes your comment, it's because that's how we're figuring things out today. So you can't see the questions at all, if anybody has any?
Nothing
But
on
Marlene
there.
can. So Marlene will read them to me. You might, hang on guys. Did you, oh, you do have it expanded. I don't know. I don't know what's happening, but that's okay. We're going to figure this out together. I don't know why Facebook is being difficult, but it is. So first things first, if you missed the post from the other day, we have not 1, but 5 Sammy kits on the website. So these are all on there right now. The ladies were busy cutting and packing them right before the video. So if you are interested, and just to let you know, and it is in the description of each one, but you do get everything you need, option of the pattern, if you need the pattern or not. When you order a pattern with a kit, you do get a paper copy, and then you also get your key fob hardware. So even if it's not shown in the picture, you are gonna get that anyway. And just another reminder for kits, all of the kits come with an option to get the pattern or not, because some of you already have it, and you just want the kit. Some of you want the entire thing. You will always get a paper copy when you order the kit. If you don't want that and you want to, get the pattern as a PDF and, start doing whatever you want to do at home, just, organizing yourself, you will want to order the kit without a pattern and then go ahead and order the pattern separately as a download. It's totally up to you, but you do get a paper copy with the kits. Let's talk about retreats, because we were just talking about that. And Barb, don't worry about it. As long as Marlene can see it, we're good. So we have 2 retreats two different options that we're working on right now. So Barb and I are trying to do some in-person retreats, and I had asked you guys, and thank you so much for your feedback, when you would be interested. And I threw out early December knowing that it was a 99% chance that nobody was going to want it, but I just wanted to ask anyway. For us, pretty much November until March can be iffy for weather. So we always just plan and hope for the best. I know a couple of people had said, well, February in upstate New York, trust me, April in upstate New York can be kind of hairy. We hope that we get good winters, but we never know. So we do the best that we can and we try to plan. I know that a lot of you locally were interested, so you understand our weather and some of the accommodations. A lot of you have done Barb's retreats, so you know what to look forward to at her retreats. But I was a little shocked and blown away by how many of you live outside of New York State that want to come hang out with us, which I think is awesome, and everybody is welcome. We don't have details right now. The resort that we have done retreats at, I say wait, Barb, I went to one, that Barb does retreats at, had first said, we've got lots of dates, and then said, hold on, we're checking. So we don't know for sure. She's checking with a couple of other places in our area. We know the area, we know where there's, places to eat and quilt shops and all that good stuff. So we're trying to plan something great for you guys so that you'll really enjoy it and hopefully want to come back and do more. We don't know if it's going to be something brand new for us or if it's going to be a venue we've already been to, but we're kind of working that out. So hang in there. We will have details for you, I hope soon, maybe next week, maybe in 2 weeks. I don't know. So hang in there. It will be first come, first serve. Once we get details and we have pricing and we know how we're doing everything, you will be the first ones to know. I will put it on here. I will put it on my website. We will get you the information. So in the meantime, while we plan for our 2022 in-person retreats, we have scheduled two more virtual retreats, and there's a possibility that I might do one more before the year is over. But for today, I have two for you. So in July is going to be our first, our second virtual retreat, our Beat the Heat summer retreat, because I just thought it was cute.
Cute.
So that is going to be July 30th through August 1st. And I did extend the hours a tiny bit, not anything too crazy, because believe it or not, sitting and sewing with you guys and laughing all day and eating cake makes me tired. I'm still a little bit tired from the weekend. But I extended the hours. So on Friday, we're going to start at 1 instead of 12:30, because what was I thinking? Saturday, we're going to go 9 to 9. And then Sunday, we're going to go 10 to 3. We had ended at 1 on Sunday. So we're just extending a little bit. It's all on the website. There's no quiz. You don't have to remember any of that. So retreat number 1, there's, I just put them up this morning. Again, it's first come, first serve, and we had a ton of you from the first one that were interested that I hope come back, but I am not rolling anybody over. You don't get an automatic spot. So if you missed it the first time and you want to get in this time, I would say do it sooner rather than later. Last time I had left the listing up until Thursday, the day before. I will be taking it down probably early that week because it's very stressful for me to get your goodie bags out and to plan how many people are coming. And I mean, we talked to all of you on here, so it's hard for me to plan that up until the last minute. So the listing is up now. It'll probably come down sometime that week. The second retreat is, I wrote the dates down, September 24th through September 26th. So that's our awesome autumn bag retreat. If you want to sign up for either of those, all the information is on the virtual classes page. They're right up at the top. And a quick note on virtual classes, all of the ones that I had scheduled for this summer have been filled. And I am not going to list any more virtual classes for the rest of the summer. We will pick up again in the fall. So if there's something you're looking for, let me know. But for now, we're going to put classes on hold just so that we can get some other things done and take it a little easy this summer. Because I know locally, we don't usually do a lot of classes and stuff in the summer, and we do have the retreat coming up. So I don't know if there will be birthday cake at this retreat, but if it's someone's birthday, we can get a birthday cake.
We can just get a bag retreat cake.
We can just get any
That's
cake.
true. Maybe they could put
Happy
a bag
bag.
on the...
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, there you
We'll
go.
get a bag retreat cake. My 41st birthday was by far the best birthday that I have had in my adult life. I'm sure I had a childhood birthday that was amazing. I just don't remember. But it was great. And I had four cakes. My husband bought me a cake. Barb and Marlene bought me a cake. A customer sent me a cake. And, and I got a cake at Log Cabin. So I had four cakes between Wednesday and Saturday.
Is there any left?
I don't want to talk about it. So anyway, my food baby is due soon. Yes, I ate a lot of cake, but who can say no to cake?
Oh my gosh.
I mean, come on.
It was so good, all of it.
They were amazing. They were so good. Now I'm thinking about cake. So anyway, I mean,
Barb, run to
it's
the bakery,
cake.
cake. Run to Villa Italia.
Oh, yeah.
We had another birthday during the retreat, and so maybe one of these dates will be your birthday, and you can tell us, and we'll celebrate your birthday.
Sue Smith says 1 cake for each decade.
Yeah,
One
there you
cake,
go.
exactly,
Oh my God.
exactly. So, and I'm fine with that. I'm totally fine with that. So, before we get into talking about handles, I want to talk about something else that I have seen a lot in the group, some posts. I've seen some different things in other places outside of our little community into like the general bag making world. I've seen a lot of this because I'm in other Facebook groups, and we talked about it a lot when we were in the retreat. And that is about your sewing machine and sewing bags in general and challenges. And I just want to talk to you guys about this for a minute because it's one of those things that that I think about a lot, and I think back to where I started and where I am now and machines and all that kind of stuff. So one thing is I've been seeing a lot of people, you know, kind of talking about, you know, I don't know if my machine can make bags. I don't know if I have the right machine for bags. What kind of machine do you have? Should I buy that machine? And here's the way that I look at it when it comes to sewing machines and bags. If I have to put a bookcase together and I have a screwdriver, I could put the bookcase together with the screwdriver. That's not a problem. If I have a drill, it's gonna go a lot quicker and it's gonna be a lot easier because I have a better tool. They're both good tools, they both do the job, but the drill is gonna make it quicker and easier. And maybe your sewing machine is a screwdriver and it's gonna do the job, but it needs a little extra something. And maybe you have, you know, the best one for bag making. I will never shame anybody for what machine they use or what they can afford or what they want to own. I'm a Janome girl. You guys know that. Marlene has Bernina. I wasn't mean to her about it. Barb has a FOF. You know, I
We were
don't
mean to
care.
Barb about the FOF.
I was mean to you about that FOF because
That
it was
FOF.
being mean to
The
you.
other one, the Husqvarna,
The Husqvarna was fine.
was fine.
Yes, if you ask me what machine I like, I'm going to tell you Janome. And that has nothing to do with my relationship with them. I fell in love with them before I was ever a part of that family, which is why it works out so well. But sometimes people, and I've seen this in classes and I've heard this a lot, they have a machine that it's not that it can't make bags, but it needs some assistance in doing so. It's not a high speed or a super heavy duty or even a brand new machine. And a lot of you know, some of those older machines, those older, you know, I bought it in 1980, they're better than some of the ones now. It's not that your machine can't make bags. You have to be willing to be a little bit flexible. Have you changed your needle? Have you tried a different foot? Have you changed your thread? You have to kind of look at some of the issues that you can address on your end. Have you cleaned it lately? That is a big thing. Maybe you haven't had it serviced and it really needs to be cleaned. These are things that you want to kind of ask yourself. One of the things that we were talking about was about needles. It's not just a size thing when it comes to needles, it can be a type as well. I don't use universal needles. I have them. I don't use them often. I use a top stitch or a microtex because they are sharper. And for me, they seem to do a better job on making bags. So changing to a 90-14 needle isn't necessarily the only solution. You may want to change what type of needle you have. So I use usually an 80-12 or sometimes a 90-14, a top stitch or a microtex. Check that. And we talked about this a while ago where you have a needle and from the front it looks fine, but when you turn it to the side, it's actually bent. But from the front, you can't tell. When was the last time you changed your needle? Change that out. Try cleaning out your machine yourself. You know, use your brush and clean it out. Take it to the dealer if it needs to be cleaned. Try a different foot. I have on my 15,000 an awesome 1/4 inch foot that I love. It's metal and it's very heavy. It really holds my fabrics tight. But here's the problem I have with it. It's wide on the left side, on where it's gonna be sitting on the fabric. So depending on what I'm doing, sometimes it gets in the way. It's not great for hardware because it's too wide. And it's not the best on certain zippers because it pushes against them. So I tried a different foot. You have to kind of check that out too. You have feet that came with your machine. Try them out. And I know that sometimes you kind of get into that rut where you use the same one. My HD9, I love my HD9. The one thing that I will gripe about, and I will just go, ugh, is that you can't pop the foot off. You have to unscrew it. Is that a pain? Yeah, sometimes to an extent. It's, not an easy pop on, pop off. But you just have to do what you have to do. Try different things. Check your thread. Maybe you're not using the right thread. Try using a slightly heavier thread. I use a 40 weight. A lot of people use 50 weight. You guys use 50 usually in your machines, right? Mm-hmm. With no issues. My machine, especially my heavy duty, it wants a heavier thread. Just be willing to try some things before you just give up and say, bag making is hard and I can't do it and my machine sucks. Because there's probably a lot of little things that you haven't tried yet. Cut your interfacing out of the seam allowance to reduce some bulk. Trim your seam allowance if you have to. Try different things because what works for me is not necessarily going to work for Barb and Marlene. All three of us could use the exact same machine, and there's a good chance that one of us will still have an issue even with the same exact settings. I had this happen to me a long time ago, and this is a perfect example. I have a friend who has the exact same Janome as me, my 7700. It's not made anymore, but we bought them at the same time. I can make my Prima Diva wallet, which is thick on the sides, with that machine. I have zero issues. I told her what foot to use, what settings to use. I set her up. She can't do it without her walking foot. That's not the machine. It's the same machine. It's obviously, it's a user, I don't want to say error, but it's the way she's using it. You are in charge of your machine. I'm not saying push and pull and break your needle and, jam your machine up, but sometimes you got to give it a little shove. Give it a slight little tug. Try a walking foot. Try changing stuff up. And I see a lot of people that kind of get defeated and they're like, well, I guess my machine just doesn't sew on cork. It's too thick. If I can make an entire cork bag, entire cork outside with lots of layers on a tiny little travel machine, you can do it on your machine. When I started bag making, I had one of those like $99 cheapy Walmart machines. It weighs nothing. It's plastic. It feels like there's nothing to the machine, and I made bags on it. Was it the best machine for bag making? No, but it got me through. When I changed to cork and hardware and kind of upgraded that, I upgraded my machine. And that I know is not feasible for everybody. So don't get into these groups and think like, well, I can never afford a machine like that. You don't have to. Just, try some different things out. Try out every little option because one little thing might make a difference for you. And sometimes it's mental too. Sometimes you're like, well, I changed the needle, it'll be fine. And then it works fine. And maybe it's that it was just your brain saying, you're okay now. And increase your stitch length because I always increase for top stitching, which we will talk about on handles. Increase your stitch length a little bit when you're sewing through thick layers on your machine. Marlene it was when you were top stitching, I think, was having a little bit of a hard time getting started on her Sammy.
Yes.
She increased her stitch length and didn't have problems. And that's another thing. If the bag has a thick part and a not so thick part, and you try to start on the thick part, your machine is gonna be resistant. It's not gonna wanna go. If you can work around that and sew into the thick part instead of out of it, sometimes that helps. I always put it this way. It's much easier to drive into a snowbank than out of one. So if you're going into the thick part rather than trying to drive out of it, it's going to be a little bit easier. Try things before you quit and give up because you all can do it.
In this whole vein of top stitching and everything, Shannon wants to know what she can use for top stitching over thick straps. Early.
Right here, everything I just said. Change your needle. Change the type of needle that you're using. Try a different thread. Try a different foot. Remember, I think we all tend to be a little bit lazy when it comes to our walking foot because it's a little bit more tedious to put your walking foot on, but your walking foot feeds everything evenly through where your regular foot does not. Try your walking foot. Buy a walking foot for your machine if you don't have one. They all have an option. Try increasing your stitch length. Try not starting right on that thick part. And here's another thing to know about scissor computerized machines. They don't always like to start sewing off the fabric. So what I mean is if your needle is here and your fabric is here and you want to start like this, That's when sometimes you get those jams and you get those little bird nests. Put your needle on your fabric. Take a stitch, back up, go forward. It's just little things like that. When I use my HD9, I don't have to think about that because that machine is made for thick, heavy seams. That is its entire job. It's a straight stitch, heavy duty machine. That's what the HD means. My domestic machines, I have to figure them out and kind of make a little accommodations and work around some of the things that they don't like. You can do it. So, and there was some questions in the group and some really great responses. And I think somebody even said, I think it might have even been Charlie, the same machine and the two different people, you're gonna sew differently. We all sew differently. We all hold things differently. So try some stuff out before you get super frustrated and quit. And along those lines, when we're talking about, you know, some of the bags, the Sammy wallet, I know, and I told you guys this last week, there's gonna be a couple of parts of this that are a challenge for you. But understand, and I explained this during the retreat, there were some different options for finishing this. I did not like them. I don't want you to have to very carefully measure and plan out this little bit, and you have to top stitch and you have to fold, and then you have to glue your zipper in when you're done. That's not me. I don't like that. And I didn't want to do something where you had a flap of a zipper hanging off the end. This wallet's gonna give you some challenges, but I also needed to challenge myself as a bag designer. I can't keep making simple tote bags. I want to challenge myself. I am working on a video for this. It will be a free video to give you some of my tips for doing some of those more challenging parts. The girls made them. A lot of other people have made them. Some people have had some struggles. Stick with me. It's a thick wallet and it has some little challenges. Plus it's small. Anytime you work on something small like this, it's going to add some extra stuff. It's going to add some extra little like moments. But you can do this. Trust me. I wouldn't tell you that you could do this if it was impossible. So that is all for all that. Retreats. Okay.
Allison says persistence pays off.
It does. You are 100% right. And that's the thing is that I think, and I see this with bag making, I also see this even with my husband's business, is that we are so used to everything happening right now, getting an answer right now, having everything be simple right at the moment.
I think we need to call 911.
You know, receiving our package the next day because it came from Amazon. Everything being
Do you need 911?
That's right.
And this is what she lives with.
If you sign up for the retreat today, you can have him. Thank you for letting me lose my entire train of thought. I appreciate that. Thanks.
Oh dear.
I'm done. You can have him. Marlene's single. There you go.
Oh, Eric.
I literally lost my entire train of thought, so I quit.
So you're talking about
no, I have no idea. I have no idea.
Anybody remember?
So, no, I'm sure it doesn't really matter.
Oh my gosh.
Oh dear.
That's so funny.
So anyway, let's talk about handles. Unless my husband wants to interrupt anymore.
You better go lock that door.
Yeah, there's no doorknob.
There's no doorknob
Yeah.
on that one.
We'll
Yeah,
put
remember.
something
I'll
in
just
front of
stand
it.
in front of it.
Marlene has to go sit in front of the
Your
door.
Eric and my Eric would get
Yeah.
along well, she says. Shannon.
Shannon, I'm shipping him out to you. You can have
Shelly
him.
says we love Eric.
You can have him. Because right now I don't. Because he just totally distracted me and I have no idea. I had a point, but the point is gone.
That's okay.
Can I borrow it?
So anyway, let's talk
Go ahead,
about
Eric. It's okay.
handles. Because I'm seriously going to commit homicide
I
on
was
this
gonna say,
video.
you're gonna kill him yet.
Well, yeah, it's gonna happen. So anyway,
Love you.
let's talk about handles. All right.
Keep smiling,
You didn't
Jess.
see that one.
Even though you'd like to punch him.
At the moment, yes, I would absolutely like to punch him because I am trying to make a video, and he's slightly annoying. So if you want him, bidding starts at $0. Just come pick him up. He's very expensive to feed. That's all I'm going to tell you. And he does not, 16 years later, put his socks in the hamper. So if you want a man who will change your wheel, eat all of your food, eat your snacks that you keep for yourself, and not put his socks in the hamper, he's yours. So let's talk about handles for a minute here. let's go ahead and look at some of the handles here, and then I'm gonna give you all of the tips that I have for making handles. So a couple of things, we're gonna talk about cork and we're gonna talk about cotton. I'm gonna talk about your measurements, how to know what measurements to use, how to make them look as best as you possibly can, and I'm gonna show you how I make a faux rolled handle. Bobby had emailed me and we were talking about this. I don't do a legit rolled handle. It's kind of like my fake version of a rolled handle, but I'll show you how I do that. So when it comes to handles and top stitching, I think that they can make or break your bag. I think that if your top stitching is off or if your handles aren't right, I think that that can be one of those things that really, really throws you off on your bag and makes you not love it so much. So when it comes to your handles, you have cork and you have fabric as an option. You have other fabrics as well, depending on what you like to use. And here's one right here. I actually did 2 samples for a rolled handle. Tuck that in. So this Ellie bag right here has the rolled handle written into it. And this Liana, which I think is what started the conversation with Bobby and I, is done differently than the pattern. I used some of the hardware and I did a rolled handle on it. So let's just jump right in. I have a bunch of little samples here and I'm just gonna grab whatever is in front of me and we're gonna start. So let's do our cotton first, because I think I have more tips for you for cork. So when it comes to cotton handles, and again, this is just how I do my handles, what I have found works for me, and what I like to do when I'm making bags. I am not a fluffy, thick handle kind of person. I know that a lot of bag patterns, especially some of the older bag patterns, I don't know so much anymore, they like to put batting and fleece and different things inside to make the handles kind of squishy. That's not really my style because I don't like my bags like that either. I like them more streamlined and more crisp. So I use Decor Bond. You can also use Decoville. Just remember a couple things with Decoville. Number one, it is only 17 inches wide, so you are gonna have to piece, and I have a tip for you on that. And also, it's a little bit thicker. So if your machine is not super in love with thick layers and you haven't figured out your sweet spot for how to make it go through them, the Decoville is gonna add a little bit of extra thickness to that. It's not that much thicker than Decor Bond, but just enough. Kind of like paper to cardstock. It's not super, super heavy, but it is gonna give you a little bit of extra. So what I do on my handles is I cut whatever the width is that I need of my fabric, and I cut my interfacing the same exact width. Sometimes I'll cut it a hair shorter, like 1/8 of an inch, just so that I don't get any of that sticky residue on my iron. But I do cut them the same. So when you're cutting your fabric handles, this one for instance, this Ellie bag, this has a actually does it? It looks wider. Nope, it's a 1 inch. This is a 1 inch handle. The technique that I use for cotton, you're going to cut your fabric and your interfacing 4 times the finished width. So for a 1 inch handle, I'm gonna cut it 4 inches wide. So this right here would make a 4 inch handle. And I've done this in all of my patterns. It's a simple technique. I don't do tubes. Tubes never come out right for me. There's always one spot where it's kind of wavy in the middle. So I just fold it. I fold it in the middle. I fold my edges in, and I fold it in together. So the only raw edges are gonna be at the ends, which are going to be sewn onto hardware or into your seam. And then you can go ahead and do your top stitching. And there's two very different trains of thought when it comes to top stitching. I have always sewn my open side first, always, because that I have to concentrate on keeping those edges together and sewing that. And that's what I've always done. And then I've gone on to do the rest of my top stitching. Some people like to do it the other way and sew this side because they say that you don't get any kind of a bubble or a wave to your handle. I don't get bubbles or waves in my handles. And Barb's shaking her head no, so she doesn't either.
I don't.
I just have always found it easier to start on the open side. Now, I like a double top stitch. I do 1/8 and 1/4. That does not matter which one you start with, but I always start with the 1/8 of an inch. My brain just does it. And it does not matter. If you do 1/4 and 1/4 and then switch and do 1/8 and 1/8 or do it the other way, it doesn't make any difference, but I always start with the 1/8 of an inch. That is just me. So I start on this side and I do my top stitching. So when it comes to top stitching, here's the best trick that I can tell you. First of all, find the right foot that works for you. I like a foot with a flange. Do do you sew your seams with a flange foot or without?
I do not.
No.
Barb does not, and
I
you
do
do
not
not.
like them.
And I find that I am super off when I don't use a flange. I like that guide on the side for everything that I do, and they don't. And they have two different brand machines. That's just what you found that you liked over the years. Have you tried the guide and it just didn't like it?
I don't like it.
Yeah.
I don't like it.
See, everybody's different. I need that guide. That guide does something magical for me, and it could just be me being convinced that I'm doing a better job with it on and not having to pay as much attention. So when it comes to your top stitching, matching your thread color and your bobbin to your fabric is what's going to hide any mistakes that you make. Here is a handle. It's a black background fabric. It has lots of colors. What color do I use? I use black. It's pretty hidden in there. Up close, I can see on some of the lighter spots, I can see my top stitching, but if I'm off a little bit, I'm not gonna see that as much as if I had said, you know, say used white. Here is the Allison glass fabric. I didn't change my bobbin for this on purpose. On the back here, I use black, okay, which I can see, but on the front, I use that rainbow thread. I think they both kind of hide into the fabric well, but I feel like I can see the rainbow thread more. So here, I'll hold them like this. I feel like the rainbow thread stands out more than the black does. And it depends. Sometimes these multicolored fabrics are kind of tough because it's hard to find what thread color matches, but the better you match, the happier you're gonna be in the end. If you're not sewing a super straight line, or if you're having a problem with your foot or whatever is going on, that's when you're going to see that you were straight and then you kind of went off a little bit or you fell off the edge. That's when it's gonna stand out more. I love contrasting thread, but I'm very picky about where I use it, and I don't use it a lot on handles just because I know it's gonna drive me crazy if it's not perfect. So this, here we go. So when it also when it comes to cotton, if you're doing hardware, like on here, I have to wrap this end around this piece of hardware. And back in the day, I used to do it on the interfacing end, which means I would fold it over like this and sew that. I have no idea why my machine was even cooperative at all, because that's a lot. That is 12 layers of fabric and interfacing. That's a lot. That's a lot for any machine. So what I do now is I don't interface all the way down. I have this floppy end here. If I'm putting any kind of hardware, whether it is an adjustable strap like this that has a swivel hook, whether it's a piece of hardware like that, I don't put interfacing to the end. On both ends, if they're both going into hardware, on one end, if that's the only place it attaches. And I used to get this question a lot in classes. When I would tell people to short their interfacing, they'd say, well, do I still stitch down there? Yes. You do everything the same, you just don't have interfacing here. And what that does is it reduces the bulk, so when you have to fold that over to hide your raw edge, you have less bulk. Yes, I still have 12 layers of fabric, but I only have 4 layers of interfacing. That right there, that is a huge difference. You can even feel the difference. You can see it. So that's what I do on cotton. Now, when it comes to interfacing, here is another trick, and I've said this a lot, but I always like to repeat it because I do get this question too. Can you piece your interfacing and use multiple pieces on a bag? Absolutely. Because it's a fusible interfacing, I don't sew it. I don't take it to my machine and sew it into pieces like I would a piece of batting for a quilt. I don't sew them at all. I just iron one on and add the next one. But here's what you don't want to do. So on this, I overlapped it. It's maybe 1/8 of an inch. It's a little bit. But you see how my fabric is fine? It's not creasing or doing anything weird. Here's what happens when you butt it up next to each other. You don't want that. That is a weak spot, and that is going to make a crease in your handle or your bag. It's not going to go away. Once that gets in, that's how it looks. So you don't want your pieces touching each other. You want them overlapping. So don't butt them, overlap them. And it doesn't have to be a lot. And I do that on all of my long handles for adjustable handles, or even if I just have a bag, I'm making the bag front and I've run out of interfacing. You can always do that, just overlap it a little bit. That tiny bit of bulk will not make any difference, but this will make a difference, and you don't want that. So those are the tips that I have for you for cotton handles. Let's talk about cork.
You gotta hear this. Shannon?
Yes.
I often frankenfuse.
Which is essentially what I've done here.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. But here's the other thing. People often want to make it harder than it needs to be. And maybe I am just extremely lazy. I know that I am. Maybe I've just figured out the laziest ways around stuff. Here's my thought process. I need 2 pieces of interfacing. It needs to be a certain length. I could take it over my ironing board, get out a non-stick sheet, do all this work, press it together, check the length, take it to my machine, sew it, or I can just slap one on and fuse the other one on top of it. Is there anything wrong with being super anal and making it into one piece? No, but I'm lazy and I'm not going to do that. And that's the bottom line. I will never lie to you about that. If there is a way around, I will find the way around because I don't like making things harder or more time consuming. Finishing the bag is way more fun than worrying about my interfacing. If you are someone that wants to use a fusible fleece or a batting or make a thicker handle, don't put it in your seam allowance. You don't want to be sewing through all that. Put a little strip in the middle if you have to when you get, kind of here to this point before you sew. Put a little bit in the middle if you want to make it thicker and then sew around it. Just be very cautious. You know your machine better and you know the feel that you want. I don't like thick bags and thick handles. That's just a personal thing. Barb, you used to make a lot of bags way before we knew each other. Do you like more padding? Do you like the batting? Because I know that's how a lot of bag patterns used to be.
I like them a little bit thicker than this.
A little bit?
Not real thick, though. No, not real squishy or anything, no.
See, everybody likes something a little bit different. So, let's talk about cork. So, when it comes to cork, you are going to have to make your measurement only double of what your finished handle is. So this one right here is 1.5 inches, so it started as a 3-inch piece. There's no rhyme or reason for this. I just grabbed some cork scraps at home and started sewing. So that is the thing that I love about cork, is that it does use a little bit less. And this goes back to what we had talked about a while ago when we were talking about cork. How do you convert from fabric yardage to cork? You don't always, because, for example, my handle on here that is out of fabric needs to be 4 inches wide. Out of cork, it only needs to be 2 inches wide. That right there makes a big difference. So you're going to need a little bit less cork. Excuse me. Can you sew the cork the same way as the fabric, fold it into 4s and sew it? You can. I'm not going to tell you that your machine will love it. I'm not going to tell you your machine won't like it. But I have found that I don't need 4 layers of cork. That, to me, is a little bit on the thick side, but that's a personal preference. If you want your cork handles thicker, you can sew them in 4s. You can make that same style handle. Here's the thing to note, though. Cork, even though you compress it, those creases are never going to be pressed in. So if you're trying to make this, so you can get 4 layers, you're not going to get it even. You're going to use a lot of clips to hold it in place. So that's why I stick with a double layer. Now, again, on this one, I used black, which I would never, ever top stitch in black on this color cork. And I used the rainbow one. I think the rainbow actually blends more with this than it does the Allison Glass fabric. But on this one right here, same cork, I used a tan color. Now, here's another thing, and this is one of those, Barb and I have had many conversations about this edge. I remember many of these, we've gone back and forth. I much prefer the look of having the seam in the center because now I have 2 clean edges.
I like that.
See my previous statement of being lazy. This is quicker. So I have a raw edge and I have a folded edge. This is also why they've invented fabric fusion and edge paint.
But think about it. That takes longer than just folding it to the center.
This takes longer for me.
Even including putting the fabric. Oh.
I mean, okay. Oh, I see how she's taking it. Okay, with the fabric fusion, yes, it's going to take longer.
There you go.
But I don't always use fabric fusion because a lot of my samples never get touched. So I'm not selling them. I'm not giving them to anybody. My samples sit in the office. So a lot of times I don't do that part. So Barb is right. If I did the whole shebang, I did the whole thing, yes, it's going to take longer with the fabric fusion. However, for me, I don't do that because I don't sell my bags. So my bags, they're well made. You can use any of them, but they're not made for the long run. Like, they don't have to be perfect because no one's using these bags. I don't sell them. If I'm giving it to my mother, I do put Fabric Fusion on her handle if I fold it this way. So it's a personal choice. It actually does not matter which way you do it. It's still gonna be the same width. So for this 1.5 inch handle, it started at 3 inches regardless of how I folded it. Here's the other thing that you have to ask yourself is, where do you want your stitching? On a folded handle like this, where I have a raw edge and a folded edge, I stitch it the same way I do cotton. So I have an 1/8 1/4 and an 1/8 1/4. On a handle where I fold it into the center, I have stitching down the center and on the edges. I stitch the edges to flatten them out, otherwise they're kind of puffy, and I stitch the center because that's where my edges are of my cork. You also have to draw a line down the center. I am telling you, if you want this technique to work and look good, draw your line on the back and fold your edge in. I used to do it with clips, and now I find the clips just get in my way. I would much rather just hold it with my fingers, work my way down, do the other side, and then I'm done. And then I can add any more top stitching that I want to. This right here has 6 lines of top stitching because I felt like it, obviously, at that moment. It does not matter. It's up to you. I could have eliminated 2 rows, but for whatever reason, that day I said, I want to add 2 more rows of top stitching because it's up to me. I can do whatever I want, just like you can. These handles are also interfaced. Most of my cork handles now, I don't interface. That's another choice for you. If you want them stiffer, you can add interfacing. But just remember, when you're fusing interfacing to cork, you have to fuse on the interfacing side on the back. Your iron can touch the cork. It's not going to hurt it. That's not the issue. You're not going to get enough heat through from the front like you do on fabric to adhere it. So when you put interfacing on the back here, chances are your edges are going to shrivel on the interfacing. Don't worry about it.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Do you ever use a decorative stitch on your handles?
I was getting there. I don't have a sample because, no, I don't. Because for me, I don't like the look of it. But whenever one of you guys does it, I'm like, man, that looks good. Why don't I do that? So that is another way to get around. If, let's say, you don't have the perfect color thread and you're just having one of those days where you can't stitch a straight line to save your life, make your handles with a decorative stitch. We have so many of them on our machines that we probably don't use. I don't know. It's always funny when you go and look at new machines and they're like, and this one comes with 300 decorative stitches. And you're like, I'm going to use like maybe 1, but that's great. Yep. So that's another way. You can use variegated threads to give it a really funky look. You can jazz up your handles however you want. I am not a big fan of decorative stitching when I do it. But you guys do it and I'm in love with it. So try that out. Even just a zigzag if you want to. If you want to just do a little something. Some of these machines have some awesome stuff on there. And I see them on my machine. Every time I open that little lid and I'm like, and then I don't. And I just like, I'm like, straight. We'll go back to the old, default. So another thing, when it comes to piecing things together, and I didn't talk about this with the cotton, but let's say that I am making a super long handle. I need this 2 full lengths because I want a big, long crossbody handle. I'm going to need extra interfacing. I'm going to have to overlap that. We understand. But what do I do with the fabric? When I sew it together, where do I press it? I press my seam open and then I fuse my interfacing over top of it. And I don't care if where the interfacing overlaps is at the same point as that seam. It does not matter. Don't overthink it. When it comes to cork, I have always pressed it open to eliminate bulk. But for some reason, my brain the other day said, try something new. So I did. And I actually like it a little bit better. And I'm writing this into another pattern that I'm working on right now because I like it better. Because we all evolve. We all change. So instead of pressing the seam open,
look at that.
What I did is I split my seam. So I cut it, I'm like 1 thread away from where the stitching is. I pressed them in opposite directions. And now when I close this, I don't have bulk. And I have a nice strong, because I'm not going to interface this and put anything else over it. So I kind of like that better. That's just something new that I have tried and I like it. Try different things and see what works for you. Some people like to do a 45-degree angle with their joins. That's fine. You do it, if you're a quilter, you're used to doing that with bindings and with borders. There isn't a wrong way. I just write into the patterns what I'm doing at that moment. And when I wrote the Kaylee bag, I was interfacing my handles. When I wrote the last pattern, Fiona, I was pressing seams open. The next bag, not gonna tell you the name, I'm pressing my seams this way. You don't have to do everything that I say. I'm just telling you how I got to the point that I got to. Yes.
April would like to know, what about a triple stitch? Will it perforate the cork?
Sorry, there is no reason why it should, unless you are using a teeny tiny stitch length, which you don't want to do in your top stitching anyway. I always make a longer stitch length when I top stitch. So my Janome, depending on what stitch I'm using, the regular stitch length is anywhere from 1.8 to 2.4. That's what it comes up on my screen. I don't use those. 1.8 is way too small. That's like paper piecing stitch length. That's too small for me, regardless of what I'm sewing. 2.4 is kind of my minimum, but a lot of times with cork and thicker layers and bag making, I'll go up to like 2.6, maybe even 2.8. I am always under 3, but sometimes kind of close to it. For top stitching, lately I've been at 3.5 and really enjoying that stitch length, especially with heavier threads. And I thought I had the cone out, maybe I put it away. That sewing,
Behind
can
your
you see?
cup.
Oh, it's behind my cup. This stuff right here, we talked about this last week because it came in when we were sitting here. A lot of people, and even the website, calls this sewing string because it's heavy. I showed you, this is heavy. It is a 20 weight. It's a thick thread. This, I did try on my domestic. It was okay. My HD9 loves it. I think it makes beautiful top stitching. I mean, look at that. On cotton and on cork, I think that looks absolutely awesome. This is not something though that I am going to want to try to stitch tiny little stitches. I want a bigger stitch. It shows the color nicely and it goes through the layers nicer. So doing a triple stitch, I don't see any issues with that. The only time that you're going to perforate your cork, and I found this out doing embroidery, is when there's too much in one spot and it's too small. And that was the only time I had an issue with embroidering on my cork, was when I had a flower that was all of this big. I mean, it was minuscule. And it was like the third color on this tiny little flower bud, and it was all in one spot, and that's when it perforated the cork. Other than that, if you increased your top stitch length, you should not have any issues. Don't use anything smaller than a size 80 needle. Go up to a 90 if you want, but if you're in that spot, you should not have any issues. So, making sure that I didn't forget anything before we talk about rolled handles. There it is. Okay.
Those were interesting.
So Barb did this on hers because she made an Ellie at the
Never done it
retreat.
before.
So when you are talking about a genuine rolled handle, it is called that because the center of it does have a roll to it. It is rounded. And inside of that is usually plastic piping. There's sometimes cotton cording. There's something round in there to help hold its shape. I know a lot of people do that well. Again, I am lazy. So how can I make something that kind of looks like that? Sorry. Where I don't have to find another product, I don't have to change my foot, because with that you need to use a cording or a zipper foot or a piping foot. Why can't I just use the foot that I already have? So what I do on a bag like this, to make this kind of faux look where I still have enough down here for my hardware, is I make my handle like this. This does not work with the fold to the center option. It's not, it looks really weird because of your top stitching. So for this one, I just fold it in half. I do my 1/8 inch. I skip the 1/4 of an inch top stitching because it kind of gets lost in it anyway. So I just stitch my 1/8 of an inch. And then what I do is I mark, and I do about 2.5 inches from the end. You can go a little bit more if you want to. It depends on what you like, but I find 2.5 inches is fine. And I just fold it in half like this, but I don't sew all the way to the end. So I'll put a little light mark, or I'll put even just a pin in the seam just to kind of keep it there. And I just sew on top of that 1/8 of an inch down, and then I have this flat part. And that part right there is what I can either sew into the bag or I can wrap it around hardware. And another little thing that I do on my hardware is I take my scissors and I cut a little angle on each of those sides so that when I fold it in, I don't see it at all. I can use a rivet, I can sew it, I can put it on however I want. This one I did rivets, and this one was before we had rivets, so I just sewed it in place. But it's not a legit rolled handle. It's not that type of rolled handle. It's just my cheater way of doing it.
But it looks so cool.
But it looks cool.
And it's easy.
And it's very easy. And rolled handles are really nice looking, but I just never have all that stuff on hand to put into it. And one time I sewed piping and I broke a needle and I jammed my machine. It was my own fault. It was my fault. But I'm a little scarred from that, so I stay away from anything that has plastic in it or anything. I don't know what I was doing that day. It was not a good day. And last but not least, just one little extra thing just to show you. So this is a little tiny handle that I have for the Leading Lady wristlet. The only thing I want to tell you about this is that my specifications when it comes to things like this, I don't interface little handles. So this is a 1/2 inch wide. There's no interfacing in this. That's just my thing. I feel like I don't need to. I've never interfaced anything that tiny. Anything that's 1 inch or 1.5 inches, I interface when it comes to fabric. And when it comes to cork, it just kind of depends on my mood. It's sometimes I interface it and sometimes I don't. If it's an adjustable handle, I don't. Because it's enough length and then it usually doubles over, I don't find that I need to. So that was handles in a nutshell. There's a lot to know, and there's so many ways that you can change your bag just with the handles. Look at this bag compared to the one behind me that is done. Is it behind me?
Yes.
Yes. Over there. The one that is done by the pattern that has a fixed handle up the front. Yeah. It changes the look of your bag. There was no reason why I did the hardware in here except I wanted to. I just wanted to try it out and see what I thought. And I think
a different handle too.
Yeah, and a different, and use the rolled handle. Yeah. It's not included in the pattern, but now you know how to make them. I like this fabric, and I was at home and I had icicles and I thought, I'm just gonna put them on there instead. And that's what I chose to do on that bag. You have icicles, you have jewels, you have strap ends and strap keepers. Those are all different options for you to change your handles up. If you're a plain Jane and you don't like any of that stuff and it's just, you don't have it on hand or it's just not your style, sew your handles into the seam or sew them flat onto the bag. You can make them as fancy or as simple as you want, and there's no wrong choice as long as you're happy in the end. That's really all that matters. That bag over there, that one that I paper pieced, I put icicles on that because I did not want cork covering more of that paper piece part that I did. The icicles, they cover a little bit, but it's not too over the top where I've lost all that work that I did. So I think that's it. I think that's it for handles. So, and I'm remembering our first handle discussion before a lot of you were with us. It was last summer. It was around the same time. It was so hot in that office over there. Yeah. It was before we had the air conditioning, and I was also talking about my Janome machines, and I was sparkling that day.
Yes.
Really, really. And I was glistening, and we were having so many internet issues. That video, if you watch that video, please erase it from your memory and never look at it again. It was awful. So this is your new and improved handle video that I hope is a lot better than the first one. I've ordered some things for next week to hopefully get our equipment situation taken care of. I hope that you guys can hear me okay, and this is good. I didn't even think about it. Barb is really close to it, so you should be able to hear her just fine. I hope you can hear me okay. If we're having any sound issues, I am sorry, but nothing wanted to work yesterday and apparently today, so we're making do with what we have. Yep. But if they're asking questions, they must be able to hear me. So
obviously,
they
can hear you.
And no one's complained that they can't hear me, so I think we're okay.
Nope, there's not one complaint.
No, so I am gonna run some errands and go get my hair cut because Mama got some grays going on here and I need it colored. And I will see you guys next week with fresh hair. And I don't know what we're talking about next week, but we'll figure it out in the meantime. Otherwise, have a great weekend. Sign up for the retreats if you're interested. We've got about 8 weeks for the countdown for the next one to go. So I'm just saying, or 7 weeks it might be now. I don't even know. But sign up if you're interested. We had a great time. And I will talk to you guys next week. Bye.
Bye, guys. Bye.